In today's world, people feel lost in a sea of ideas. Which ones should we accept? Stay tuned because you're listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. Here is your host, Kurt Jaros.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here on another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. We've got a great episode up for you here today. We're talking about the soul, what it is, and how we can know that the soul exists. But before we get into that, I just have a few announcements for you. If you're one of our longtime listeners, I'm sure you've heard some of this before. But on September 8 and 9, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, I'll be at the Deeper Roots Conference, which is an event, a future annual event. This is the inaugural conference in partnership with the Library of Historical Apologetics. Defenders Media will be there, and I'll be hosting, emceeing, I guess is the term. We've got some great speakers: J. Warner Wallace, Tim McGrew, Lydia McGrew, and a host of others. I know Rob Bowman and Tom Gilson, and it should be a lot of fun. I hope that you can join us. If you want to learn more, you can go to defendersmedia.com and click on that Deeper Roots image. And then also, last week, Veracity Hill started its annual fundraiser, and we're looking to raise $800 of recurring support each month. And so I'm pleased to report that we have our first pledger of $50 a month. So now we're only looking for $750 a month. And we're going to be making that push. You'll likely be hearing from me either through a phone call or a Facebook message, an email perhaps, looking to get your support. If everyone just chips in a little bit, we'll make it there and no problem. And let me just briefly talk about the breakdown of this fundraising. So where the money will go toward, because that's what some people, they want to know where it's. So from that money, first, we want to start having a relatively small advertising budget for Veracity Hill, so that way we can promote our shows on Facebook, so people that either follow us or especially those that don't follow us can see what we're doing and listen into the things that we're talking about. Secondly, our tech guy, Chris, has been a volunteer for over a year now, and we want to be able to show him how much we appreciate him and the value that he has to our team here. So some of the money will go towards that. Finally, the third category is money towards me, the host of the show. I know that I've already raised a little bit when we first got started. I'm looking to have a little bit more, and some of that is because, some of the reason for that is because I'll be taking a little bit less in terms of my work with Defenders Media. The reason for that is because we have two new hires. So first, we've hired a director of marketing, and I will announce who he is in probably a couple weeks here. And we've also just recently hired an event planner. This event planner, she's actually going to help to coordinate the annual Defenders Media Conference. So if you've been asking, I know some of you have been asking, hey, when's the next Defenders Media Conference? We will do one this year in 2017. And so I'm looking very much forward to that. The theme will be on the Reformation. This is the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. So we're going to be discussing not just the history of the Reformation, for those that are unfamiliar with it, but also the ideas there. Were they good ideas? Were they bad? What are some of the downsides? And of course, what are some of the good sides as well? So I'm a Protestant, a proud Protestant, and so we'll be talking about that. So stay tuned for more details about where it's going to be and the date. Just those are just couple brief announcements for that. And now I want to explain. So for those that are following live here on Facebook, or listening in on the website, we got started a little bit late today because we're trying something new. So we're actually going to video stream in our guest, which is the first time. This is the first time that Veracity Hill has done such a thing. And so hopefully the extra time will, we made sure that we had all our bases covered so that way there won't be any technical glitches. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Khaldun Swice onto the show, and we'll have Chris hopefully get up his the video stream there. And let me tell you a little bit about him. So, Professor Khaldun Swice's world turned upside down when his son died, but it was through that pain that he found the evidence for Christ to be an indispensable anchor for his soul. He now seeks to help others who have gone through difficulties with the astounding evidence for Christ. He leads the famous Socratic Project, which hosts debates and discussions on critical issues of our time. He has taught philosophy of religion for none other than Oxford University for 9 years and is currently Associate Professor of Philosophy at Olive Harvey College in Chicago. He holds a PhD in Philosophy of the Mind from the University of Hull in the United Kingdom. And he's got numerous books, which we'll get to later on. But Dr. Swice, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
It's a pleasure and an honor, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Great. So today we want to talk about the soul. So let me start off with this broad question. So before we get into sort of the reasons we have for the soul, let me just ask a broad question. What is the soul?
You come right to the heart of it, don't you? Well, Descartes would define it as the immaterial part that makes you who you are. The immaterial part, the inner workings of your inner being, that part of you that cannot be quantified in any physical mechanism in the universe. But nevertheless, without it, you cannot be you.
Okay. It's that immaterial aspect to the human person. There's something more than just our bodies, at least it seems. Okay, so with that question sort of already put out there, you've provided here a number of reasons. And again, before we get to those reasons, so what has made you interested to pursue this topic?
You see, Kurt, many of us go through different periods of life or difficulties in our lives that change us. One of the things that changed me and changed the trajectory of my life was watching my uncle die. And when he died, my world turned upside down. He was gone. And then later on, when I lost my son, I went through a deep darkness within myself, a time of questioning, a time of searching, soul searching, and asking myself, is there anything more to life than this? Is the human being nothing more than a body? And I remember standing over the gravesite, and my niece was there, Ariana. She was about 4 years old at the time. And they buried brought the tombstone down, not the tombstone, excuse me, the coffin down, and began to cover the dirt there. And somebody made a comment that is glad that he's with the Lord now. And she opened her mouth and blurted out, "Wait a minute, how could he be with the Lord when he's right here in the coffin?" Which is an astute comment coming from a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
The point is, if he is only a body, then that's it. How could he be somewhere else? That's a contradiction. Unless the person is more than just a body. And that made me start thinking about the question at a deeper level. For me, it's not just academic.
Yeah, no, that's it really is a personal, a very deep emotional question. It's a soulful question. And so that you're right. It's not only an academic one. And if it is talked about at the academic level, it's surely not only academic. It filters its way into our lives and into our common shared human experience. And so perhaps that's why the question of the soul is so important, that we take the time to consider, what is the soul? Do we have it? And why is it therefore so important to us?
Right, and it's sad that we have to actually debate the soul and present it, because the vast majority of humans in the history of the world have believed that human beings are much more than their bodies. I mean, you really have to have an academic degree nowadays to disbelieve that.
Yeah. So that's a great point. And I know there are many out there that whether we think they're self-deceived or just mistaken, think that all that exists is the material world. So here I have in mind, the new atheists, especially. And of course, it's nothing new. I mean, there have been materialists around, especially, I think the Greek philosophers. There were at least a couple. So it's not a new topic, but it's something that maybe because of the the growth of atheism in our country, at least, is becoming a more popular idea that all that exists is the material world.
Right.
So,
and the prevalence of science and the advancements of the scientific establishment and the scientific revolution and the wonder science provided start making people question, well, what about, is there things science can answer? And it seems to be the consensus, at least in the modern mindset, is that no, that science answers every question. That seems to be the common vernacular on that.
Right. And maybe we'll get a little bit into this, but I'm sure that there are some scientists that are trying to find the soul. Maybe they think it's like an energy of sorts, as opposed to just immaterial. Are you familiar with any sort of movement in that area?
Yeah, there's a field called the Center for Consciousness Studies in Arizona. David Chalmers and other great philosophers are heading that. And what they're doing is they're studying that part of us that cannot be quantified physically, meaning the spirit or the mind or the soul or however you want to call it, in different aspects. And that center is doing a lot of wonderful experimental work about the inner workings of the mind, or what is called the binding problem or the consciousness problem. There are different terms for it. They're also looking at something called the hard consciousness problem, or the hard problem in philosophy of mind, which is trying to quantify something deeper than the quote easy problem. See, in philosophy of mind, we have all these terminologies, but the easy problem is trying to figure out how the mind interacts with the body, how the spiritual or the non-physical interacts with the terrestrial or the hard things of life, the desks, your biology, how that interacts with your mentality. That seems to be the easy problem. Supposedly, it's not really easy, but because compared to the other problem, which is how is it that consciousness emerges from or comes out of the physical? How is it that this 3 pounds of flesh in my brain, that's called my brain, has this conscious experience that's more complex than anything in this known universe?
Right.
How does that happen? And that seems to be the problem that the Center for Consciousness Studies is actually looking into on a deeper level, using all the resources of science to do it. And one of the things that they're doing in the process is causing many to doubt the very tenet of naturalism itself.
Right.
It claims that only the physical exists. But there is something that's not physical, namely our consciousness, our ability to wake up. And for your listeners, when I say consciousness, what I'm talking about is when you wake up in the morning and you're slowly becoming aware of your environment, aware, hopefully you know the person you're with when you wake up. Hopefully you're aware that there's an alarm going off. You're becoming conscious of your environment. That's called awareness or consciousness, becoming aware. That's what I mean by that. And that awareness is not only awareness of the environment, but also awareness of my inner man, the introspective being of my soul.
Right.
Who am I? What am I thinking? So there's a lot of work done on that in that area. And some great research has been poured into it.
So now, especially when you talked about humans being able to be introspective, to be self-aware, that would maybe differentiate mankind from the animal kingdom. Is that a accurate statement?
I would say that. There's actually a test done in psychological circles called the Rogue test. And what the Rogue test is, you take a young child, let's say, I know you have little kids, Kurt.
Yeah, 3 and 1, yeah.
I used to play with my kids when they were little and my niece. What you do is you take a child who's around, when they're about crawling age, and you put a little mark on their face that's a different colors, lipstick or something to that effect. Because when you put a mirror in front of a child for the first time, they think it's another child. They want to knock it over. But when the child realizes that's not another child, it's actually them, the Rogue test seems to tell them there's something there. They begin to wipe the face, their own face, rather than the face on the one in front of them. If you put a mirror in front of a bird, he keeps hitting the mirror thinking it's another bird. And most animals will think it's another animal.
Right.
Only chimpanzees and maybe higher order animals can actually recognize that. But whatever it is, it's an ability to recognize that you are different than your environment. And that you are able to self-reflect. So a dog knows that he's hungry. Right. But you know that you're hungry. That's a deeper level. You know that you know. That level distinguishes us from animals. Of course, there are many of different areas. But one of the things, that the main thing, is the ability to self-reflect and self-analyze yourself, which actually makes you morally responsible, which makes animals not.
Nice. Yeah, that's well, the opposite use of the term wild, you know. Okay. All right. Now, lest we get off track here, we want to talk about what are some of the reasons for thinking that the soul exists. And so you've got sort of 5 reasons here, and I'm hoping you can guide us through these 5 reasons for why we should think that the soul exists.
Sure, we can go through it. And I have a little slide here. Let's see if this will pop up here. We can work that out. Share screen. Let's see. Let's start that.
Great. Yep.
See that?
Yes.
All right. So I have let's take, for example, when we see a newspaper article or newspaper clipping, or we'll hear this daily, sadly, that a body was found or the body of so-and-so was discovered under the river. Why don't we say Joseph Smith was found there? Why do we say the body of Joseph Smith was found? Because even our vocabulary betrays what we know inside.
Yeah.
That Joseph Smith is different than his body. We know that at an intuitive level. Almost all the cultures of the world know that at an intuitive level. Like I said earlier, it takes an academic degree to doubt that. So when I lost my son Enoch, I began to think deeper upon the question, and led me into a trajectory to start saying, okay, what is the evidence for this? And part of my doctoral work was actually looking into the evidence for something beyond the body, beyond what was beyond the gravestone. So Sherlock Holmes said the following, which is one of my favorite literary characters. The process of finding things out, said I, starts upon the supposition that when you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Right.
It may well be that several explanations remain, in which case one tries to test one after test until one of them has been a convincing amount of support. So what you do is you look at all the amount of evidence for a thing and start eliminating that which does not conclusively point to it. And whatever is left leads you to the proposition that there may actually be something more to you than your body. That's what I'm getting at with that. Now, there's a problem with this. Some people actually, Kurt, they would lead toward a soul in the gaps argument.
Okay. Yeah, right.
I mean, we can't explain it, therefore it must be the soul. No. Yes, some people can go that route, but let's try not to make that fallacy as we go through this. Okay, so you asked me earlier, what is the soul? There's a lot of, the biblical definition of the soul has different myriads there. There's the nephesh, which is the Hebrew word for soul.
Okay.
And in Arabic, we say nafish or nefes, which is breath. And in Greek, the word is psyche.
Sure.
Either way, they're talking about the inner man. Interesting, the word psychology is the root word for psyche. It's a study of the soul. But modern psychology has drifted away from that. They don't care. Most of them don't even believe in the soul. What they're studying is the behaviors of people.
Right. Yeah. Our mental thought processes as opposed to our soul.
Exactly. Or what is it that makes us who we are? So this Ecclesiastes says the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit, or the nefesh, returns to the God who gave it. What is this thing that returns to the God who gave it? Well, Aquinas and Aristotle talked about that. And I'm not sure how far you want me to go with that, or you want me to get into just specifically the reasons and how far you want to go with this.
Yeah, well, let's. Why don't we go through the 5 reasons? Because I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss on those alone. But of course, if those of you following online here are interested, please do follow up, and we'll make sure we'll address all of your questions.
Okay, so can you see this here where you have part 3?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so there are different levels, and what I'll do is I'll go through these together and we'll go through them. So qualia is what's called conscious experience. This is the technical term cognitive scientists have used to describe the inner experience you have of listening and watching this show right now.
Nice.
For example, if you were to go to the doctor's office and he would ask you, okay, how much pain are you in? And how many of us have not heard that question? Yeah. And they show you this ridiculous chart of all these emojis, right? One of them is going, ah! And the other is going, in peace. And which of these emojis do you identify with? Right?
Yeah.
My first impression is to say, doctor, you're the medical professional. You tell me how much pain I'm in.
That's...
He can't, can he? Because pain is a conscious experience that's not quantifiable physically. This is called qualia, experiential experience.
Huh. Yeah, so for a doctor, I mean, he might be able to see, say if we have a broken bone, he can see the broken bone, but he doesn't, you're right, he doesn't know how much pain we're feeling as a result of that.
Exactly. He can see the neurological damage that's being caused, or the neural firings going off in certain parts of my brain when I'm feeling pain.
Yeah.
I can see the nerve endings being damaged, but he won't see the pain at all, because pain is not physical. Neither will he see pleasure, by the way. And you know what's interesting, Kurt? When I have a broken heart, how are you going to measure that one?
Yeah, that's...
Some of them are much more painful than any broken bone.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then, interestingly enough, I mean, the emotional experience, the even soulful experience will manifest itself, in some cases, to physical pain for some people. Yeah.
Yeah, it can lead to that. So that's one main reason we say that we can say that there's something more to us in our bodies, our conscious experience of what's around us. There's something we call, in number 2, called the unity of consciousness, or the binding problem. It goes under different names in the scientific enterprise. But basically, it's saying that there is something inside of us that unifies all of our experiences. So when I'm having this conversation with you, and your team and your people are listening to this, there may be some grapes on the table you're eating. There may be a bus that goes by. There may be a police officer who's making a rounds outside that you hear his car moving. All these things are together are a unified experience. It's happening at once. But which part of the brain is quantifying all these together? There isn't one part. That's why it's called the binding problem. We don't have anything that will report on our inner lives that's within us, that's beyond us. Philosophers have said this is a problem called the homunculus problem, which is Greek for the little man.
Okay.
So if I look inside me, I'll find the soul. Then what's unifying the soul? Well, that's another soul. What's unifying that soul? Another soul. That leads to infinite regress, is what they argue.
Sure.
That's because they're falling into a problem called the categorical fallacy. What they're saying is that the soul is some kind of physical thing. Gilbert Ryle came out with a wonderful book back in the 70s where he said people cause what is called a categorical mistake. So if I were to go to Oxford University and walk through the halls, and I'll stop a student and say, "Excuse me, where's Oxford?" He'll say, "It's here." No, I'm looking for Oxford University. So I leave him and I go to the biology department, philosophy department, the physics department, and I keep asking them, "Where's Oxford?" I'll never find it.
Yeah.
Because it's the unified center of all colleges.
Well, yeah, and that's even that. I think that's a better example than, say, like American universities, because in America, usually it's bound to just a campus, a physical location. But right. all the more, which I think your point here is still valid, that it's not even bound to the physical campus, but for a place like Oxford, where there are colleges throughout the town, you're right. It's this unifying body, and I don't mean body in a physical way.
Right. So all these colleges together make up Oxford.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the recent Marvel movie, the Ant-Man, and others, where the man shrinks to the level of a subatomic level and he goes into the brain, the body, and some of the comic series, he actually goes in there looking for the soul inside the brain. And he won't find it. There mustn't be one. And that's what Ryle's experience was. Is you're looking for it, you won't find it because it's unified. But you won't find it because it's not physical. That's why you won't find it. It's a category problem. It's like asking who made God, right? It's a category problem because the answer is a different category of things, because the category of God has no maker, or the category of everything else does. And instead of asking where the soul is, we can't find it because it's not physical in the physical world per se. But it's nevertheless real. The second reason I gave you was the unifying of our conscious experience is one of the reasons to say there's something more to us than just our body. There's something that unifies all the experiences of our lives. And that's a second thing there. So let's see here. That was the first one, and there's a qualifying. By the way, there's something in the quantifying our inner lives, called the knowledge argument by Frank Jackson. Have you ever come across that, Kurt, in your studies?
I have not. No.
Oh, this is fascinating.
All right, so tell me about it.
Okay, so Frank Jackson says, imagine there's this girl named Mary. All right, so here's Mary here. Let's get to her. And Mary is born congenially blind. She's colorblind. And she's been blind since she was a child. If I can get to Mary, there she is. All right. So Mary is blind, but the problem is Mary is fascinated with color. She's colorblind, but she's fascinated with color. So she becomes the world scholar on colors. She knows all the spectrums of colors and all the different types of light variations of every single color has, and the neurological fires that go off when you experience every type of color. I mean, she is it. She's the best at it. Now, here's the problem. Does Mary experience color?
Right, yeah.
No. There's something else in addition to your knowledge of red that you will have differently when you actually experience it. So one day Mary wakes up with a miracle. She can now see red. Has Mary learned something more than just the physical information?
Right.
Yes. Frank Jackson says this is the qualia part. This is the part that unifies all of us as well, that there's something more to the world than just the knowledge we have. There's also the experience of the knowledge. And he calls this the knowledge argument, which is one of the ways to take down another pillar of naturalism that he takes down with that. Although he himself is, interestingly enough, still struggles with naturalism himself, even though he has this wonderful argument that knocks one of the pillars of naturalism off, that there's more than the physical world than just the physical.
Yeah, that's really a great point, that we can study the facts and the propositions. We can be experts in a field. But if you haven't experienced it, that's an entirely different notion as well. So what can explain those experiences? It's something that is not quantifiable. That's really a great evidence for the soul.
And particularly, for example, swimming. I mean, you can learn all you want about swimming, but it's a different world when you jump in that water.
As someone who doesn't like to swim, yes, that's right.
All right, let's go to the third one here on my list. I have the problem of free will, okay? Now, this is fascinating about free will. Now, free will is one of the biggest debatable concepts in all philosophy, and also what keeps us philosophers informed, of course. Keeps us paid, because we can get a debate about it constantly.
Yeah.
Because there's no one answer to the question. But think about this. If we are nothing but the physical body, if we are just a physical mechanism of neural firings and amino acids, then we would be following up to the law of cause and effect and the chain of cause and effect. If naturalism, which is the theory that everything is natural, says that if the human body itself is a force in nature, then that force will be acted on by another force in nature. And every decision I make is acted on by a prior decision. And that decision was a prior decision. And unless there's something within me that can override all that and say no to my dispositions, characteristics, and desires and preferences, then I am just another animal. But I'm not just another animal. I can say no to all my dispositions, characteristics, and desires.
Yes.
I don't have to do what a dog does or what a dog is. They must give in to that. That's their nature.
Yeah.
Unless it's an overriding force, such as an attacking animal or something to that effect, he will eat when he's hungry. He will mate when he's in heat. Yeah. I don't have to, contrary to certain popular books out there and popular media about teenagers having to give in to all their natural inclinations. But we can override that. And that ability is what sets us apart. One of the things that sets us apart from the animal kingdom, our ability to be free.
Yeah. Now, Khaldun, let me ask you this. Since I know some of the listeners to the show, we've talked a couple times about the Calvinism-Arminianism debate here. And so you've brought up the notion here of free will with regard to the soul. Does that sort of the idea? Does this argument of free will require a certain level of freedom, a model of freedom, which could prevent one from embracing one or two of those camps? Of course, I think there are more than those camps, but let's just take those two camps.
What do you mean by that? Are you saying a biblical model, or does the soul necessitate a certain particular model that should be embraced? Or I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Yeah, I know, and I don't want to get super technical, but I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering this. So you talked about how the freedom, the human freedom that we have here, means that we can do more than what our nature desires.
Right.
Does that make sense? And there might be some Christians, I have in mind here, determinists here, who might think that we can only do what our nature says. Is that related to this issue here of the soul? And I'm just asking because I know some people might be concerned about that here. Right.
Well, there's a whole debate in the theological enterprise on how free we are. Well, there's determinism and determinism, different types of libertarian free will theories on it. But basically it's saying is when God gives us a command, choose this day who you will serve. Mm-hmm. When it says that in
Joshua.
In Joshua, yeah. Mm-hmm. And in Corinthians it says, no temptation has taken you except what is common to man. God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted more than you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will provide a way out so you can endure it. Now, how can that be unless I can choose to either give in to the temptation or walk away?
Yeah.
And the temptation may be giving into my biological urges or my epistemic urges, whatever it is.
The flesh, as Paul says.
Yeah, the flesh. Do I have to give into the flesh? No, I don't have to be true to myself, so to speak. I need to be true to God, and I have to choose to do that. And I can't do that unless I have the ability to choose.
Yeah, there you go.
And of course, there's a whole thing of soteriology and regarding the issue of salvation, whether what God chooses or what we choose.
Sure.
That leads into a whole different discussion.
That's right. But suffice it to say here, this model of free will is able to be affirmed on both sides of the camp. That's what you'd say?
Yes, you could be a compatibilist or determinist, a compatibilist or a libertarian free will agent and still believe that this argument can be used to support the soul.
Gotcha.
I think you're going to have a harder problem if you are more in the determinist camp because you'll be buying into getting in bed with the naturalists and the materialists at that point.
Right. And part of my reason for asking this is I know that there are, so now this is my reason for, I guess, delving a little bit in this direction, because I know that there are some Reformed folk that affirm it's called like Christian physicalism or materialism, and they're people that they believe that there is no soul. I mean, these are Christians that don't think the soul exists, and so
yes, I have something here if you see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of those. They're actually more recent in the theological landscape. Take, for example, Nancy Murphy or other people like Norman Malcolm, Peter Forster. Others have argued for a Christian type of materialism,
right,
where they argue the soul is real, but it's not necessarily different from the body. It's actually unified. I think there's a lot of theological and philosophical problems with this position that we can get into later if you'd like, or get into it. But there are people who do hold to that.
Okay. All right. Well, lest we get totally off course, let's get back here. So free will, and then sort of the fifth evidence here for the soul you had was personal identity. Okay,
personal identity. Did we miss intentionality here?
Oh,
or does it have an order?
Yeah, perhaps not. Maybe we skipped over.
Maybe. Well, what I have, I'll come to personal identity, but what about intentionality or aboutness? So intentionality is not just your intentions, but it's a technical term in philosophy, meaning it's about something. So this computer or this video computer is not about something. An image is not about something, but your thoughts can be about something. Your thoughts are toward the content of the object. That conscious beings refer to it. Alvin Plantinga, one of the greatest philosophers in the last 4 or 5 decades, I would consider one of the greatest maybe in the 20th century on philosophy of religion, put it this way. Now listen to this. This is amazing how he put it. He said, we can examine the neural events as carefully as we please. We can measure the number of neurons it contains, their connection, their rates of fire, the strength of electronic impulses involved in the potential axis across synapses with as much precision as you could possibly desire. We can consider the electrochemical neurophysiological properties in the most exquisite detail possible. However, nowhere here will you find a hint of content. Meaning, I'm thinking about my mother. You can study all these wonderful aspects of my brain. You will not find my mother.
Right.
That's something I experience myself. It's it's called the intention or the aboutness of it. Let me give you an example of how this works. Okay, so the student comes into my office a couple years ago. Great guy, one of my best students. And he says, Professor Swartz, I'm struggling with something. I say, what's that? He said, I can't seem to grasp the fact or put my mind around the fact that there's more to us than just the physical. Matter of fact, I don't believe anything that's not physical. I told him, you don't believe that? He said, I do. I said, you don't. He said, I do. I said, you don't. He said, I do. I said, listen, you don't. He said, why? I said, think about it. The very thought you have, I don't believe anything that's not physical, is itself not physical. He thought for a moment. Said, that's right. I said, yes. Matter of fact, there's a whole gamut of different things in the world that are not physical that you believe. For example, morality. You can prove that how somebody died, when they died, how long they've been dead, what kind of instrument was used to kill them. But you cannot prove scientifically that it was wrong to kill them. Yet morality is very much real, but it's not physical. Intentionality is one of those things that sets us apart, that sets apart consciousness from us. There's something about us in our mind, namely our thoughts and our ability to think about things, that itself is not physical. It's evidence that there's more to us than our body.
Yep. Khaldun, so before we get to the next point, we do have to take a short break here. But afterwards, after the break, I want to make sure we finish up here on these evidences. We do have a question from a texter here. And for those that are interested, if you want to keep following along with the discussion, and if you want to have your voice heard, you can text me. So just text the word Veracity to 555-888, and I'll be sure to ask Dr. Swartz here your questions about the soul. So stick with us through this short break from our sponsors.
Listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
Evangelical Christians are talking about hell. What if we believe what we believe because we've always believed it? What if the gospel is really a matter of life and death? We want you to open your mind, open your Bible, and rethink hell. At rethinkinghell.com, evangelicals look at what the Bible says about hell, putting conventional and controversial views to the test.
Hello, I'm David Smith, the Executive Director of Illinois Family Institute, a state-based Christian pro-life and pro-family public policy organization. I want to invite you to join us as we seek to be salt and light to a dark and rapidly decaying culture. You can do that in a number of ways. For example, you can join our email list to get timely alerts and great cultural commentaries. You can like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, listen to our podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can attend one or more of the special events and forums we host in different parts of the state. We do all these things to encourage and equip Christians in Illinois. You see, we need you to help us fulfill our mission to boldly bring a biblical perspective to public policy. Our faith requires us to be bold, speak truthfully, and love our neighbors. Join us. Visit illinoisfamily.org to learn more.
All right, thanks for sticking with us through that short break from our sponsors. And now I'm joined here by Dr. Khaldun Swartz, and today we are discussing what is the soul and how do we know that the soul exists. And before we get into that last point of evidence, Khaldun, I guess I'm not sure if I asked you this beforehand. If you wanted to playing a game or a round of rapid questions. This is just...
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so again, we're just going to ask you short, fun questions. You've got 60 seconds to answer as many of these as you can. And so we will get the game clock started here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. What's your clothing store of choice?
Banana Republic.
Taco Bell or KFC?
Taco Bell.
What's your favorite sport?
Frisbee.
What's your most hated sports franchise?
Oh, the hockey team from Chicago.
Oh, have you ever driven on the other side of the road?
Yes, I have.
Do you drink Dr. Pepper?
Yes.
What's one thing you'd be sure to keep with you if you were stranded on an island?
One thing I'll keep me stranded on the island. My trusty hat.
Okay, the Hokey Pokey, electric slide, or the Macarena?
Hokey Pokey.
And what fruit would you say your head is shaped like?
Dragon fruit.
Hey, what was that?
Dragon fruit.
Dragon fruit. I'm not even sure I've heard of a dragon fruit before.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. I'll have to Google that. All right. Well, Dr. Swice, thank you so much for playing a round of rapid questions. Okay, so for those of you, just a quick summary here of where we've come from so far. So in the first half of the show, we talked about what the soul is and some of the various perspectives on that, and then why this topic is so important. And then lastly, we've been going through 5 reasons or evidences that point us to believing that the soul exists. And as Dr. Swice said, it's very much like a Sherlock Holmesian point of view here, where we look at all of the evidence, we look at how a number of theories fail to adequately understand that evidence. And when we're just left with the one theory, it most certainly has to be that explanation. And so some might think of this as circumstantial evidence, but yet because there's one theory that best fits the evidence, we should embrace that viewpoint, that model. So, all right, now remind me where we were at. We went through, is it, how do you say qualia? Qualia? Qualia. Mm-hmm. And we've also gone through the unity of consciousness, and we've touched upon free will and even intentionality. Okay, so we're left with this last one here, personal identity. So tell us, how does personal identity point us to believe that the soul exists?
Well, take, for example, the chip of Thales, which is a famous philosophical conundrum and paradox. Mm-hmm. So Thales has this ship that he travels with in Greek mythology. And he comes home after some of his great adventures, and the ship is falling apart. So they begin to replace the ship in his planks little by little, and they go back out. And he comes back again, and they replace other planks of the ship that are falling apart. Sooner or later, the entire ship is replaced. Can we still say that's the same ship? Well, we can say sure, because it's all to replace different parts of it. But what do you do with a person when you start replacing different parts of a person? Mm-hmm. See, our body doesn't make up who we are completely. It's part of our identity. See, I'm not a substance dualist in the fullest extent of the term. I believe in more of a holistic type of dualism where the body and soul make up who we are together. Because who you are as an individual is made up by the body that God has given you. Because Adam didn't become a full person until God breathed into him the breath of life. Then he became a living soul, the scripture says. Mm-hmm. We can't take apart the soul the way we can take apart a ship or take apart a person. We can take apart my hands, take apart my feet, but I'm still me. But take apart the inner beings, rip me apart, and put me back together? Will I be the same person? No. Take an example, a 90-year-old criminal. There are many, one famous individual, I forgot her name. The name escapes me right now, but she was in the one of the terrorist attacks in Ireland a number of years ago, back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she had escaped and put a bomb under a car, which killed the family. In her 90s, she was discovered hiding in the United States with a whole new family. Finally, they took her to trial, and she argued, that wasn't me. I'm a different person now than I was in my 20s. Granted, a lot of her has changed, but there's still a part of her that's the same.
Right.
But what part of her is that? The body changes, it shreds cells, the bones change, the brain structures change.
Right.
What is it that stays the same through time? And this is what philosophers call the personal identity problem. What is it that makes the one thing at time t is the same thing at time t5? Throughout all its journey, throughout all its tenure, there is something that keeps you the same. We call it the inner man or the soul. Take the picture you see here of the older lady and the infant. Now, granted, when you were little, you were small, cute, and cuddly, Kurt. You know, what happened now, but now you're a different being than you were when you were little.
Right,
but we still say you're the same Kurt, right?
That's
even though
right.
a lot of things have changed. Even your fingerprints may have changed since you were an infant. Your genetic structure may have changed, but you're still the same being. What is it that makes you the same through time? We call that personal identity. It's one of the things actually Buddhists deny. Buddhists argue there is no Atman, there is no soul that survives. It's only your experiences that survive.
Interesting.
But what is it that's arguing against that? So I told to one of my Buddhist friends, you're arguing against the soul, but who is it that's arguing?
Yeah, who? Yeah, who is arguing that? That's funny.
So those are the 5 main reasons you can hope to say that there may be more to us than are just our body. Maybe our soul or our inner man that survives after our death and that is held accountable before the Lord. And at the end, he will unite the body and the soul together in the resurrection. And the same way you have the software and the hardware, if I may use that example. Your body's software, the hardware, and that's separated the death of divorce and death from the mind or the psyche or the spirit. And at the resurrection, God brings these full together to make you a fully compatible unit that will face judgment or eternal bliss.
That's great. That's great. Well, Khaldun, we're running a bit short on the time for our show today. But we do have someone who texted in this question. And I know we covered this a little bit earlier, but this texter is wondering, how do I know, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, just reading off of this, how do I know that the soul is not a physical thing?
Okay, great question. What's the name of the question? The questioner?
Well, so we're using our texting plan here, so we just have a phone number. There's no.
In this question, get this, texter. So we have a text message, right? But you can't have a text message unless you have a text messenger. You can't have a mind a thought unless you have a mind that makes a thought. You follow me? Okay? And this mind that makes a thought itself has to be something that's able to generate that thought. It has to be, you can't just have pain without somebody who's experiencing pain. You can't have thoughts without someone who's experiencing thoughts. And it has to be more than our body, and here's why. Descartes struggled with this a lot in his meditations, which I recommend you take a look at, wonderful pieces of literature, where he argued that the mind and body as defined as follows. The body is that which is extended into space, and mind is that which reflects and thinks. Okay? Everything physical is extended into space. There are some various objections to that within the physicality in physics, such as gravity and things of that nature. But overall, everything physical is extended in there into space that can be measured. The mind is not physical. That's why it's not extended into space, and you can't put it on any machine to test it. But nevertheless, it makes us who we are. I mean, you have something called brainwashing, where you can alter the trajectory of somebody's life by feeding them false information, and cults do that. That's who you are, and that is what makes it physical. I mean, real, but not physical. There's a lot more to that, of course.
Sure. Good. Well, before we end here, I want to talk about some of your books. So your most recent book is Killing God, Addressing the Best Arguments from the New Atheists. So I imagine you deal with some topics of the soul in this book?
Yes. Well, quickly before I go there, I have here on the screen 3 books that I recommend for people to take a look at. Biblical Anthropology and the Monism Dualism Debate by John Cooper. Body, Soul, and Life Everlasting, of course, is J.P. Moreland's book, The Soul. and The Search for the Soul, which is 4 Views in the Soul. These are books I recommend if your readers would like to dig deeper into this aspect.
Great.
Regarding the books you mentioned, the book I wrote, Killing God, that specifically addresses the main arguments that the new atheism has had. And I dive into those on a more detailed level. It's done for a popular audience. It doesn't address the soul per se,
Gotcha.
but it does go over the problems of atheism in the context.
Yep. And we also have here this book, Christian Apologetics, an anthology of primary sources, and which is just a great collection. I mean, this is some of the best, if not most of the best of Christian apologists throughout history. And it's a book that you can buy at the Defenders Media store, too. So if you go to defendersmedia.com and click shop, you can buy it straight off of our website. Tell us, where can people learn more about the work that you're doing?
Sure. I'm currently, if you follow me on the website, logicallyfaithful.com. And I also have a podcast by the same name, Logically Faithful, where I work and do similar work that you're doing, interviewing and interacting on the greatest ideas in history. And it's an amazing journey that we're on. So logicallyfaithful.com, I recommend people go there. By the way, there's a free book for you that I have, another free one, in addition to the ones I did, called Blind Spots of Science, 10 Things Science Can't Prove. And that's available for you at the Logically Faithful website. You can just go there and you can download that.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Khaldun Sweis, for coming on the show today.
It was an honor and pleasure, Kurt. Thank you for having me.
All right. God bless you.
You too, brother.
All right. Well, that does it for our show today. Before I sign off here, let me send one more reminder to you about the fundraiser that we're doing for Veracity Hill. We would love to get your support. We're looking for monthly recurring donors to help us reach our now decreased goal of $750 a month. And we would love to get your help to get this podcast out to other people who may have not have heard of it before. Among the other reasons for why we're raising the money here. So we've got next week, we've got an interview coming up. It'll be a pre-recorded show. It's an interview with Dr. John Walton on his recent book on the conquest, the supposed genocide commands, and his take. And if you're interested, last year we did a show with Dr. Paul Copan on this topic. So feel free to go back. It was one of the earlier episodes we did, probably in the first 10. Go back, find that episode. You can find all the episodes on the website. Wepisodes. Wow, that's a new word there. And so listen to that before perhaps tuning in next week as I again interview Dr. John Walton from Wheaton College. So that does it for the show today. I am grateful for the continued support of our patrons and partnerships that we have with our sponsors, Defenders Media, Consult Kevin, The Sky Floor, Rethinking Hell, the Illinois Family Institute, Evolution 2.0, and Ratio Christie. And thank you to the tech team today, Chris. He was hard at work getting that live stream going with the video feed of our guests. So hopefully that's something we'll continue to do for you. And I hope that you enjoyed that as well. So please give us your feedback on that. And finally, I want to send a thank you to Dr. Khaldun Sweis, who provided some insightful reasons here for why we should think that the soul does in fact exist. 5 reasons that point us in that direction for embracing that model, a theory as to why we should think that the soul exists. So that does it again for the show. I want to thank you for your support, for your listenership. And if you really enjoy the show, I would love it if you gave us a review on iTunes or the Google Play Store. And so thanks again for tuning in and for striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
You've been listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. This is a listener-supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.